Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode number 35. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and I am genuinely glad you are here. I probably don't say it enough. I know I don't say it enough, but I'm glad you are here, and I'm glad you're listening to my voice, whether you tuned in specifically to hear my guest today, or you are an avid listener. Whatever the situation, I am genuinely glad you are here. Full disclosure, I'm having kind of a rough morning. My phone just died. It's battery, nothing serious, but as I turned it back on and charging, last time I was recording, even though I keep it on mute, just vibrates all over the place, and my microphone picks it up. And Audacity crashed twice, just deleted my last recording. So this is like the third or fourth time that I am recording this. I'm not telling you this because I want self-pity or your pity. Maybe you do have some self-pity right now, but I want you to know that it's okay to have technical issues. I am very technical. I don't know all of the bits and the bytes, but I've been working with computers, selling computers, building computers. I've written an ebook about podcasting, and I've done like 30 or 40 hours of this stuff. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm not necessarily wet behind the ears anymore, and I still have technical issues. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. Hopefully you can tell that by listening to my voice or listening to other episodes of my podcast. And as you will hear in the episode here in just a few seconds, don't wait until you have everything worked out, all of the glitches taken care of, all of the wrinkles ironed out before you get started. That's as I reflect on this episode, I had a few takeaways, and now that I've had all of these technical issues, that what I'm about to say really resonates with me more than anything else from this episode. And as I say that, I don't have my notes in front of me because I had to restart my computer, so I'm going to probably butcher this quote. But don't wait until you have all your ducks in a row before getting started. I think Matt says, there's a spoiler alert, his name's Matt. I think Matt says don't wait until you have all of the instruction or the education, whatever it is, before you get started. And I'll share a little bit more about my story at the end of the episode, but make sure you also stick around because there's two things that I'm really excited about, and I want to mention those. But I'll wait till the end so we don't waste any more time with my rambling, my technical issues, or anything like that. So we'll go right into the interview. Stick around at the end. I got a few things I want to share with you. Here we go. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Podcast. Today I am here with Matt Theriault, who is an entrepreneur, an author, the host of the DoOver Podcast, and a veteran of Desert Storm. How are you today, Matt?
Very good, Ellery.
So thanks for coming on the show. I know it's kind of in the middle of your week and in the middle of the day, and probably taking you from one thing or another. But give us some background of where you have come from. I know, for example, that you spent some time in the music industry, and that didn't go exactly according to plan. So can we dive into that, and will you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure, be happy to. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent probably the next 12, 13 years of my life in the music business. I had a small little record label, but I had major label distribution. No one had ever heard of us. We didn't have any hits. We did hip-hop music, and it was a very niche way that we did hip-hop. We only sold 30, 40,000 units per release, but we did figure out how to make 30 to 40,000 units profitable. So we put out a release once a month, and we did very well. And we seemed to be growing at a steady clip there. And then, within a 6-month period, it just seemed like everything stopped, and it really had a lot to do with this old website. I don't even know if they're still around, Napster. And
Napster.
The digital download had made its appearance, And one thing that happened was, you know, the crowd that consumed underground music, whether it was underground rap or underground rock or underground dance, that crowd seemed to embrace the digital download far before the general population ever knew even what it was. And so we noticed that our CD sales were coming to a screeching halt. And it was very much due to our audience was that audience that liked to download music. So I had a very basic formula that worked over and over and over again. When it became less and less effective, I just threw more money at it till I just drove the whole thing right into the ground. And age 34, I declared bankruptcy and then got divorced. And, found myself at age 34 bagging groceries for $7 an hour. And I didn't know how to do anything else, though. I mean, that had come the music part of it had come very easy to me. It didn't even seem like work. And, I had 6-figure months pretty consistently, and now I'm working for $7 an hour. And, what you'll find when you're down and out like that is there's no shortage of people to share your story with, to have pity parties with. Yeah, everyone will lend you a shoulder to cry on. Everyone will lend you an ear to share how terrible things are. Everyone will give you a really nice pat on the back. Everyone's really encouraging. But after about 8 months of that, I was like, you know what? It just hit me that no one's going to do it for me. Everyone's encouraging me, but no one's actually going to do it. And that was a part where I was just like, okay, well, if the old cliche, if it's going to be, it's up to me, right?
I like that. I don't know if I've heard that before.
Oh, you haven't? I thought that was used and abused.
If it's going to be, it's up to me. Okay.
Correct. If it's to be, it's up to me. And so I had to go learn something new. I didn't know how to do anything else other than, produce and market music. But I wanted to, if I had to learn something new, I wanted to learn whatever it was going to be that had the greatest possibility of recreating the lifestyle that I've become accustomed to. What's gonna give me back 6-figure months is what my real question was. And I got the answer from a very unlikely source, happened to be the manager of the grocery store, who was probably about a year or so away from retirement. And he had shared with me that, Matt, if you really want your life back, if you want your money back, the final frontier for the average person to create that type of money is real estate. And, I don't know if that's true or not. I tend to believe it is because it worked for me. But at that time, that was absolute gospel. I was like, the light bulb went off and I was like, boom, that's what I got to go learn how to do.
I always like the quote for real estate that says, buy real estate, God's not making any more of it, something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The supply is certainly fixed. Yes.
There you go.
And the demand is growing. So that's a good business to be in. So I did what I thought the logical thing would be to do. What made a lot of sense to me, and what I've found is it made a lot of sense to other people, at least initially, was to go become a real estate agent. So I got my real estate license, and I did very well the first year. I got made Rookie of the Year in the first year, and I did a little better the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And again, as you're traveling through this journey of life, you get hit with epiphanies here and there, and you never know when they're going to happen. But there was one Saturday, I was all dressed up in my suit and tie. I was waiting for my client, and this was a very special client because this client had given me repeat business. He just constantly gave me business over and over and over again. And I was sitting there waiting, and I noticed that he was about 20 minutes late. And when he finally got there, he was in jeans and a T-shirt. And I had all his paperwork laid out on the desk, and he gave me all the signatures, signed everything, and then took off for the weekend with his buddy. And it was just kind of like, you know what? I think I might. I know I was supposed to get into real estate, but I think I'm on the wrong side of the desk. I wanted to be my client. I didn't want to serve my client, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I was working, he was off on the weekend, and I had to sit there and shuffle paperwork and then go hold his house open and while he was at the beach. And that's the life that I wanted. So I made this decision that, okay, I'm no longer going to be a real estate agent. I'm going to be a real estate investor, and real estate agents are going to work for me. And that was my next leap. And I invested in a very expensive education. And once I got it, I did something that they're teaching at that school called Move at the Speed of Instruction. And basically what that means, you don't need to know it all before you take your first step. And so I just started doing exactly what they said, exactly when they told me to do it. And in 3.5 years, I had created enough residual income to exceed my expenses. So I was financially free in under 4 years that way.
How many properties do you own now?
I'm over 200 units right now.
Well, so do you do like condos or apartment buildings, or?
It's about 50% single family and about 50% apartment building.
So what was that process like? You said you went through and you got an education. Was that education like specifically trained to that, or did you go back to school? What was that process?
Of all places, it was basically a network marketing company that sold real estate investing education. And while
Interesting.
yeah, it was a good concept. They're not around anymore, but it was a very good education. But what I found was most of the people participating in that network marketing company, they were so dialed in and focused on selling the education. I actually did something rather remarkable, as I actually consumed the education. And it turned out to be really good information, and it turned into a great life for me.
How long you said? So it took you 3.5 years to build the real estate business, and now you have over 200 units. Half of them are single families, half are multifamily. How long ago was that when you hit that point? How long have you been doing this?
Okay, so I did this. This is about my 7th or 8th year, and it took me about 4 years. 4 years, I got to the point where, I don't know, it was about 35 properties where my passive income had exceeded my expenses, and I've been building on that ever since. So I didn't hit 200 properties, in 4 years. It's taken me about 9 years, eight years to get there.
Do you think that your process is something that anybody could duplicate?
Absolutely. And it's, thank God there was someone gracious enough to teach me how, and I don't think I'm special by any means. I just did what I was told to do. But there's a really a distinction there that really made all the difference for me. And it had to do with, the way that most of us are born or raised, and we're taught to go to school. We're taught to get the good grades. We're taught to go get the job. We're taught to max out our 401k, to save our money, to live below our means, to clip coupons, to buy our house and pay it off as soon as possible. That's what we're taught. That's what our society says preparing for the future is. And the whole idea of all that is to put away enough money so it can create a residual income for you in retirement. And so if you look at the stats right now per the Department of Health and Human Services, that whole formula for, eventual freedom or eventual retirement is failing 95% of today's 65-year-olds. It doesn't work. So I've come to know that statistic. But what I had figured out was my very first deal was a fix and flip. And I got paid very well off of it. I think I made $22,000 off that very first deal. And that was just like the most glorious payday that I did this without being a real estate agent. I did this on my own. But then it took me about 8 months before I found my next deal. And I thought, okay, so if I want to create this financial independence for myself that I've read about in several books, how much money do I need to make to put into a conservative investment vehicle that's going to generate $10,000 a month of passive income? When you do the math, depending on where the interest rates are, when you do the math, it's right around $10 to $12 million is what you're going to need. So I looked at this as, okay, so if I've got $22,000 off this fix and flip, and say that's my average, and I've only done one of them at this time, that's going to take me 545 fix and flips to make $12 million. And I mean, even if you did, one a week, that's still 52, that's 10 years, right? And then that's without spending a dime of it. That's like just putting 100% of it away. So then I looked at, one of my buddies was doing a lot of buy and holds. He was buying property and holding them as for rental income. And I looked at his, and he was averaging about $300 a month of cash flow of what was left over after he paid all the expenses on the property. He got to keep $300. So I looked at that. How many of those properties would I have to hold to make $10,000 a month? And that was only 33. So it was the difference between
much better.
Totally. So the difference between being 33 deals or 545, that was like a no-brainer. And so the real distinction when there was, don't save your money to create a residual income. Create a residual income to make your money. And I did there in 4 years what 40% of our population, 95% of our population is failing to do it in 40 years. And so now I teach that, and now I show people what's possible for them. And I've created it for myself, and now I just show people how to duplicate my effort. So yes, to answer your question, yes, they can duplicate it. But I think it's the real shift in mindset is at the center of that whole duplication process.
Whenever you had the music business and then you go to bagging groceries for $7 an hour, I think a key turning point for you was when you decided to invest in yourself to, get that education. When you're staring at a $7 an hour paycheck and you said it was very expensive education, how did you decide to say, because I'm starting to or working on taking on more coaching clients, and it's not a cheap thing, when you invest in yourself. Right. But how did you say, Matt, you're making $7 an hour, but it's going to be worth it?
Mm-hmm. Well, because the $7 an hour wasn't worth it. No, but $7 an hour, you can't get much worse than that. You'd have to, I don't know what you could do for that would pay less than that. But that was that epiphany where I just realized if I want more than $7 an hour, I have to go out and get it. I have surrounded by all the encouragement in the world, but no one's actually going to put forth the effort for me. No one cared about me more than me. So if there's something I wanted out of it, I had to do it. And so I went and I became a real estate agent. I borrowed $2,000 from my grandma. It was a funny story. I told my grandma, I said, okay, Grandma, I've finally decided what I'm going to do. I'm 34, almost 35 years old at this time, and calling my grandma. And I said, but they tell me when you become a real estate agent that you should expect about 6 months before you sell your first house, before you earn your first commission check. So Grandma, I was just wondering if I could, if I can borrow 6 months of living expenses and I'll pay you back with my first few deals. He said, oh, no problem, sweetie. No problem. I'll send you a check tomorrow. So I was like, okay, cool. So she sent me a check, and a couple days later, and I got a check for $2,000. And I was like, Grandma, the economy is a little bit different than it was when
she didn't live in California.
Yeah, so I didn't have the heart to call her back and say, Grandma, this is about 2 weeks of my living expenses. But I just knew I just had to make it happen faster. And I committed myself, and I declared that I was going to make it happen before that $2,000 ran out. And I actually sold a house in my very first open house that I held.
So feel free to plead the fifth on this one, but you were talking about retiring with $10 to $12 million, and we were doing the math just a second ago. Uh-huh. Does that mean that your real estate holdings add up to that 10 to 12 million now? I mean, again, you can plead the fifth if you want to.
No, see, the distinction there is that you don't need to own $12 million of real estate to create $10,000, but you do need $12 million of cash to create the $10,000 a month. You can off of 33 properties, and these are all in the Midwest where the average property is about, $50,000-$60,000. Do that times 30, that's like $1.5 million. So that's what I really liked about real estate is I was able to create this residual income for myself on only $1.5 million. That's probably about $2 million worth of real estate. Or I had to go save $12 million to put it in some sort of stock bond or mutual fund. Right.
I see what you're saying. So instead of, accumulating 10 to 12, cashing out and living on a beach, now you focus on, the 33 properties, or now you've got the 200, and, you don't have to cash out. You can just still go live on the beach if you want. I mean, California's practically one long beach, right?
Exactly. Right.
But you're just getting the recurring income, and instead of the pool and drawing from it, you're just drawing.
Exactly. It's my bank account is replenished at the first of the month every month. It's actually the 6th of the month, but it's replenished every month.
And my mom just recently bought, I think she might have actually bought 2 houses up where she lives, and so she's, well, never. I wouldn't even go there. But she's new to real estate. She's much older than I am. Uh-huh. So, do you have to be young, or do you think she's in a pretty good spot there, or do you have any advice for people who are brand new to getting to real estate?
Right. No, it's the thing I like about real estate is it doesn't discriminate. If you do the right activities, you do them consistently, and you do it over time, you're going to get the results. And I was just asked. I just answered this on my own podcast probably about 3 months ago, and someone had asked, you always talk about do-overs, but what if you're like 60 years old? How do you recommend doing over at age 60? And, I kind of half facetiously, half very truthfully told her the same way you do it at age 20. There is no difference. It's really just all in your head and what you're making your age mean. I mean, I've got I got a buddy here in Southern California that does high-end fix and flips, $1 million or more, and he's only 24 years old. So he's got no problem with it. And, I've got coaching clients that are already done with their first career and are trying to look for what to do in their next career, and they're doing very well. So it really, the age it's just a mindset.
When you're younger, or maybe if you remember back when you were your young 20s or something, you thought, man, it would be kind of nice to have that distinguished gray look, or, look like you have more experience. So when you're young, you want to be older, and like you were just saying, when you're older, sometimes you wish you were young. So the timing is never right. It's like you said, it's what you do with it.
Exactly.
So you also have so you've got the Epic Real Estate Investing podcast, and we've kind of talked about that. And you also have the DoOver podcast.
Right.
I like that because the do-over implies a couple things. It implies a mistake or a failure of some sort, but then picking up and moving on. Can you tell us a little bit about what that journey is for you?
Sure. Well, I started this podcast DoOver because I wrote a book of the same title, DoOver, and it really was kind of half autobiographical, half personal development of all the dumb mistakes and everything I made in the music business, and how I was able to make good and not make those mistakes again in the real estate business. So it was basically learning from your past mistakes and learning from others' past mistakes to make sure that you don't duplicate those mistakes. And I wrote the book. I didn't have a publisher, so I decided to self-publish. And I was researching how to self-publish a book. And someone mentioned you should start a podcast. And I was like, what's a podcast? I had no idea. I thought you had to buy an iPod just to make it work. And it was explained to me. And within 2 weeks later, I had my own podcast. I had no broadcasting experience or anything like that. Never done anything like that before. And I just started. Episode 1, I read the first chapter of my book. And episode 2, I read the second chapter of my book. And I just kept on going. And by the time I got to about episode 12 or so, I started noticing a very noticeable and significant uptick in the downloads. And I also noticed that I was more frequently getting questions from the people that listen to my podcast. And I was getting it from all over the world. And it was pretty amazing to see the feedback and to read the feedback of how the show was impacting people. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. So a few more episodes went by, and I'm on episode 17. And there's only 20 chapters in my book, so I'm running out of material really quickly. And then all of a sudden, it almost was, I guess from a podcaster's perspective, almost fanatical. The amount of love and adulation and respect that was coming my way via email. And so I just said, well, I guess I can't stop at 20. So I became a broadcaster. I became a podcaster and started creating that content over and released a weekly show. And that's how that came about. And from there, because my personal development experiences, when I've been able to apply what I've learned and what I've been taught and make sure I don't make the same business mistakes I made previously, was either music reference or it was a real estate reference. Those were only my two life experiences. So I was getting a lot of real estate questions, but I didn't want that podcast to become a real estate podcast. So I started a second podcast because I was liking it at this point, and I started that second podcast specifically about real estate. So that's how those two came about, and then they were kind of accidents.
Random question. Would you say that podcasting is one of the best things that you've done in recent history?
No, I wouldn't say it's one of the best. I would say it's the very best thing I've ever done.
Awesome.
I don't know how you can get more exposure and more reach for your cause for free than podcasting. I mean, you pay $40 a month for your host, and iTunes has given us a great gift, and I hope they just continue to provide that for podcasters like us.
Yeah, I was looking at traffic numbers, and I think I just maybe busted through like 3,000 downloads. So, I mean, I'm still really small. You probably get that per episode or something, or way more per episode, I bet, considering the names I see on your list here. But to get that many, 3,000 people reading my blog, that probably took 18 months or so, and I still don't get that on a monthly basis. So I would agree, it's pretty
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I had a blog first as well. And, in 2000, kind of halfway through, end of 2012, first half of 2013, I probably spent $50,000 on search engine optimization. And every time Google came out with the algorithm update, I seemed to have to start from scratch again. And, so my whole point is I put $50,000 into marketing essentially to drive traffic to my website. And I didn't spend a dime in comparison on my podcast. And that's where 95% of my business today comes from. So it was kind of a no-brainer. So I totally abandoned the SEO.
Awesome. Well, going through this list, you have some really cool names. I noticed Jason Van Orden of Internet Business Mastery. I saw Gary Vaynerchuk. I saw one of my favorite authors, even though I've only read one of his books, MJ DeMarco, the only one with an explicit tag on your iTunes.
I was so new to podcasting at one time, and he said the word shit one time in the whole hour interview, and I was like, I better mark this explicit, or else iTunes might kick me off. And I've come to learn that they're a little bit more lenient than just one expletive.
I'd be interested to know if there's a spike on that. I mean, not that the other ones don't look really good, but I'm like, what makes that one explicit? I kind of want to go in and listen to it. So.
He said it once, and he said it under his breath, and it like freaked me out. And I was like, so anyway, better safe than sorry.
Well, I'm glad that doesn't disqualify you, because Joe Cassandra, I think, might have said the same thing, and he said, "Oh shit, I said it twice." So anyway,
right.
So after all of these cool interviews that you've had on the DoOver podcast, what's the best piece of advice, or is it even possible? Because you're at like 89, that's probably like 97, 98 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
What is one really good piece of advice for do-overs that you have gleaned from all of these cool interviews that you've got?
Yeah, I interviewed a guy named Scott Duffy. He's actually my business coach, and he sold an aviation business to Richard Branson for, I think, $9 or $10 million. And very successful, very accomplished guy, younger, knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to business. He's got a new book coming out, actually, I think in April or May, called Launch, and it's how to launch a business. So he was a very expensive coach. And it was the first time I'd ever hired a coach. And he'd given me one piece of advice that has absolutely exploded my business in the last 6 months. And it was a practice. And it's not groundbreaking. I mean, people have heard this before, but I just actually applied it. Where, you identify your strengths and your weaknesses. And you also identify, maybe if it's a strength, something that you don't like doing, even if you're good at it. And just kind of create those three categories and just do the stuff that you like to do, that you're good at, and hire out the rest. And already, 2014 this January is already twice as big as last January.
Mm-hmm.
And I always looked in the past, like I'm a little bit of a control freak. If it's your baby, your company, you kind of feel like no one's going to treat it the way that you do it, and no one's going to do it the way you do it. But I really am, even more so, I looked at as hiring people as an expense. I didn't look at them as an asset. I didn't look at them as an opportunity for me to make more money. I saw them as me having to pay out more money. And my coach, he had said, if there's anything that you do that you can find someone for $10 an hour to do, well, if you decide not to hire that person because you want to save the $10 an hour, that means you are working for $10 an hour. And it was just like, it clicked. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I'm working for $10 an hour. So I kind of took a little leap of faith and hired one person and noticed my productivity just went through the roof just with one person.
What was the first thing for would you call that outsourcing?
Yeah.
Could you use that term?
I've got 3 VAs and then 3 real people here that live close by and come into the office a couple times a week.
What was the first thing that you decided to outsource or offload to an assistant or VA, virtual assistant, for everybody who doesn't know? And is it something that most people could offload?
Think so.
Or is
if you have an online business, absolutely. It was, and I'd had VAs for lots of stuff, but this was like the first person that I'm going to commit to for long term. And I just hired her to create my blog posts for me and to make them all pretty and put the links where they're supposed to be, like my show notes for my podcasts. That one thing was just I hated doing it, and I would miss weeks here and there because I just didn't feel like recording the podcast and creating the show notes. And so she does that for both of my podcasts. I don't ever have to worry about it. I just record. I post the podcast onto my podcast host. She logs in. She goes ahead and downloads it, listens to it, and makes all the key points, the bullet points. And I gave her access to stock images, a website that sells stock images. She goes in and pulls out the images, and she does a job 10 times better than I was doing. And I was just like, that was like the epiphany. I was like, wow, there are people out there that are better at this than I was, So
does she edit too?
She does a lot, not the podcast, no. But now I've hired a second person that does all infographics for me, and she's really good. So those two work really close together, and so they edit each other, and it's a good bounce off, and I don't have to worry about anything, and that's just been such a blessing.
So how did you? Because I've been exploring the idea, virtual assistants, the idea of having VAs is really becoming more and more popular. How did you find your first ones, and would you do that process again?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things I do differently. I read the book that so many people have probably read that are listening right now, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yep, I'm reading it right now for the first time.
Oh, the first time.
I'm way behind. Yeah, I'm way behind the game on that.
So that's where I was very first introduced to virtual assistants. I didn't even know what one was before I read that book. And he told me I could get all this really cool stuff done for $4 an hour from somebody in India. And I was just like, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And my immediate thought was, well, if I went and got a job and then just hired this I got the job for $50 an hour, or maybe that averages out to my salary, and then I hired the person in India to do it all for $4 an hour. What a great living that would be. But that was my first thought, but didn't last very long. So I immediately went to the different websites he refers to in there, and I started hiring. There really were people in India and Pakistan and Romania and the Philippines that would work for $4 an hour. And so I tried that out with several different tasks and found that shopping by price per hour is probably not the best method, because they would do the work and then I'd have to go fix out everything that they did anyway, most of the time. And so where the VAs really clicked for me is when I wasn't shopping by price, I was shopping more by their skill and their experience. And that has served me so much better. And I very rarely, I think I only have one VA now that works for me outside of the continental United States. I do have a Filipino that does my video editing for me, and he's absolutely awesome at it. That's why he has the job, because he's great at it. But everybody else is in Northern America, and I pay them very well, and they treat me very well.
I was having a conversation with the coworker a few weeks ago, back when I had coworkers, and now I'm on my own. But it was interesting to me how all of these people who are doing the internet business, the small business owners like you and me, who have these virtual assistants, and they're outsourced to India, to the Philippines, and things like that. And everybody pretty much says really positive things, kind of like what you were saying about your guy that does the video editing. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what it is, and this is really going kind of off of what we normally talk about on the podcast, but it's kind of fun for me. Mm-hmm. But why do you think it is that small business owners like you and me, and I know you've talked to John Dumas and Jason Van Orden, who these guys have VAs in the Philippines, mm-hmm. and it's outsourced. But when you go to these big Fortune 500 companies and they outsource, everybody, no one has anything good to say. Mm-hmm. Man, I had to talk to so-and-so for tech support or customer care, and they were probably across the street from your VAs.
Right.
Why do you think that people are getting such different and drastic experiences there? What's your theory?
Well, I mean, you kind of gave one example of a behind the scenes and then another one that was like the customer experience. So I guess that it kind of depends. I think the one unique area, because I know Jason uses people in the Philippines, and a lot of people I know that do. James Schramko has, I think, a team of 50 in the Philippines.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's a lot.
What you'll learn is you start interacting with people on a business level in different parts of the world. Even though they speak English, doesn't necessarily that they think American, if that makes sense. That the thought process is different, the culture is different, the logic, the reasoning is all very different. I noticed in India, people like to use superlatives a lot in their conversation. When they say, I am the best, you can't find any better. I give you great work, I give you the best work. And that would be their conversation. And like that just sounds kind of weird here in America, saying something like that. Like, well, God, you're pretty confident about yourself, aren't you? It's like there might be more of a question type response of like, well, what are you actually looking for? Because that's what I'll do for you. Like you don't get that in some cultures. There's just a gap there, I think, between the way that the two cultures reason. Now the Philippines, I think they have more of an American line of thinking. English is a very common language there, not just only when they're speaking to Americans, but even when they speak to each other in their own country. There's just I don't know why. It was explained to me that way, and I've 100% experienced that, so I can confirm that is the case.
I one of the first things I ever heard about virtual assistants was, I think John Dumas said it on a podcast that he was being interviewed on. I don't remember at all. I heard it 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. But he says, for $500 a month, you can pay somebody in the Philippines. And because of the exchange rate differences, that $500 a month is life-changing money. It's pick up your family and move to the good side of town, kind of. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that always has stuck with me. And of course, I've met a lot of people that use VAs and, do the things, like you said, do the things that you're best at and have somebody else do the other things. And I think it's a key turning point too, because I probably am at the point where I still see that additional help as an expense, as opposed to the investment in myself to allow me to focus on the things at which I'm the best.
Right.
And I think I need to make that mental shift, as probably a lot of people do, and hopefully everyone, as they're going along this path towards success.
Sure. The first place to start, so it's not an expense for you, so it's not taking money out of your pocket, is, you first kind of have to take yourself, whether it's you or you and a partner, when you're starting, take yourself to the point where, you at least are bringing in some revenue. And once you got that revenue coming in, then you want to create a procedure list or a system of what actually brings in that revenue. Then if you delegate that and have someone just carry out that procedure, then that person that you're hiring is actually bringing in the money also, which allows you to work on something else that brings in the money or bring in more clients or whatever that may be. So I think that's a good starting point where it won't actually be an expense, but you kind of got to a point where you do have a business model and you are selling a product successfully and consistently, or you're selling your service consistently, and then systemize that and then hire somebody else to carry out that system.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to find the system, develop it to where it can be replicable. Is that the word?
Duplicated is a good one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then let someone do that, and then you can focus on creating new or doing the things that only you can do.
Right.
So
right.
Great. This is, like I said, this is kind of a unique conversation to the show, but hopefully people have found the portion up to this point very informative. And you went from pretty drastic change from $100,000 or more a month to $7 an hour to investing in yourself, and you've seen a fairly significant amount of success. And you're doing what you love, you're coaching, you're doing the podcast, which from my own personal experience is probably quite a bit of fun. And you're doing all kinds of fun stuff. Now, Matt, being on the Empowered podcast, you might have guessed we would talk about the word empower a little. What does the word empower mean to you?
Empower is to empower. I would say to transfer confidence. Just came up.
Can you elaborate on that? Transfer confidence.
Well, empowered means, you feel like if I'm empowered to promote or empowered to record a podcast, that means I have the confidence and the know-how to do it, or the desire to do it. So if you're going to empower somebody, you're going to transfer that confidence to them so that they can carry out and accomplish whatever it is that you want them to do, or they want to do.
I like that. What's the best way to empower other people?
I think, the more coaching I do, the more I see people get empowered and even inspired is by tangible examples. So to empower someone, I think you can lead by example. There's one definition, to empower somebody or to enroll somebody or to inspire somebody is to share yourself in a way so that they see something possible for themselves inside of your sharing. Does that make sense to you? Does it resonate?
Yes, to give someone an example that they can relate to.
Exactly. And if you're not leading by example, say by physically doing something or demonstrating something, you can still do that with the conversation as well, to say something that would be, Ellery, you've got a really great podcast going here. I think you're really good at this. I started doing this almost 4 years ago, and now I have a 7-figure business. So Ellery, just stick with it. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay the course and create that relationship with your audience. Serve your audience well, and this absolutely can happen for you too.
I'm convinced already.
There you go. See? So that's a way that you can empower somebody. You tell them what they got going on for themselves. You're giving them an example that, if they keep doing what they're doing, they're going to get what they want, because that's how the person that has it already got it. So there's kind of the example in the form of a conversation.
What's the best way to get people to interact with you, send you emails, or, you've got a ton of reviews in iTunes. What's the best way to get that feedback from listeners? And if you're listening to this answer, take Matt up on his advice and let me know what you're thinking.
Sure.
So.
I give out my email readily on the podcast. And I do give, I give out a free real estate investing course. And when people sign up for that, I do give them my cell phone number actually in that very first email. And not many take me up on it. Not many people use it. But those that do, I certainly answer. Or if I'm busy, I have that forwarded to my assistant and they answer, and they're just as knowledgeable about real estate and stuff as I am. So that's how I do it. And, if you want to learn more about what I do, and you're listening to a podcast right now, so obviously you know where they are. You know that you don't need an iPod to access it like I thought. The DoOver Podcast is my personal development podcast, and then Epic Real Estate Investing is my real estate podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. So if anybody, I'll give my email and phone number at the end. But
okay.
So yeah, if you want to reach out to me, I'd love to hear what everybody's saying. Matt, back, I think it was, well, I don't know if you gave the year, but you're at the $7 an hour point, and you've got a lot of encouragement. You can bounce back. You said your family and friends were really encouraging, but what types of resistance did you face? Did anyone say, well, Matt, maybe your glory days were over, you had your 15 minutes? What kind of resistance did you face when you were in that time?
Definitely from the elders in my family. Grandparents, aunts, uncles. My mom was very supportive, but the other elders in my family definitely were. My whole time in the music business, I'm making 6 figures a month, and still nobody in my family even knew what I did for a living. They just thought I just went to nightclubs every night or something. So when that time came and I was bagging groceries for $7 an hour, ironically, I actually got approval from the elders in my family. Oh, okay, now you got a real job,
Because it's something they could understand.
Yeah. And, that's kind of a rite of passage, I guess, for a lot of teens as they're getting older. They'll work at a grocery store at some point in their life. And they could understand that. They could grasp that. And anything else I wanted to do beyond that they just didn't understand it. So there wasn't necessarily resistance, but there wasn't any encouragement. It was like, oh, that's nice, dear. We worry about you so much. We just hope that you're going to find something soon, So hearing that would be discouraging. I was like, it'd make you, second guess yourself, the people you love most in the world, or worried about you, and you're wondering like, wow, should they be worried, or do they just not know any better? I'm not sure which one is the right way of thinking, but but that was it there. The other part of resistance, I guess, was just learning how to do something new. It's really inside at the deepest root. People don't want to look bad. They want to look good. And they know when they learn something and they're learning something new that they're probably not going to look good while they're learning how to do it. So a lot of people just resist on learning something new. So I definitely had that in myself. I just came out of a very glamorous profession where image had a lot to do with the whole culture. And I was very good at what I did too. So I had a certain air of confidence about what I did. But when you go to learn something new, I mean, your knees are shaking to put that first contract together, and you're hoping you don't put names and numbers in the wrong place to where it costs you money, or you go to jail because you did something illegal or whatever it may be. But I think if people can just get past that fear of learning something new and looking bad while they do it, if they persist through that and repeat the activity over and over again, that definitely eventually will go from a place of looking bad to a place of skill. And once you've got that, you get a little bit of confidence and you can start building on that skill. And then, if you just endure that first part and realize it's no big deal, you will look good again.
Matt, just to jump in with something I just saw on your podcast. It's the DoOver episode 50, so it's February of 2012. But the very first line, it says, "Life is short. It's God's way of encouraging focus." And that's a really incredible sentence for me. Do you remember what was going through your head when you wrote that, or do you even remember what you might have been going through at that time?
Well, it's been kind of that once I figured out this difference between cash and cash flow, this difference between saving money to create a residual income versus creating the residual income to save money. Once I got that, it really kind of showed up in so many different places in my life. And I started looking at, if you were to follow the traditional path to retirement, you're going to be 65 years old by the time you realize whether it worked or not.
Yeah, work 40 years to live 20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 95% of the people are failing. And by the time you do that, I mean, at least at the very bare minimum, depending on how long you live, but at the bare minimum, 2/3 of your life are gone. The most active and productive years of your life are over. They're behind you. You can't get them back. And I think about how short life really is. And while we work 40 years most of us do something we don't like doing. We live below our means. We make all these sacrifices to have enough once that 2/3 of our life is behind us. And so you get a real grasp of how short life really is. And so why not enjoy it now? And if you just flip that equation a little bit and focus and shift your focus from making piles of money to making streams of money, you can have that and enjoy that life right now while you're young enough to enjoy it.
I like that. Streams of money instead of piles of money. Mm-hmm. Matt, if there's anyone out there that is at that $7 or $8, whatever minimum wage is in whatever state or country you're listening to this from, can you tell us what a typical day looks like for you now that you've come away from the $7 an hour and you've done all of this real estate and had all of this success?
Sure. I absolutely love the podcast. I love creating content. I love creating videos. So I love coaching. I love helping people. So those are the two primary activities that I engage in on a daily basis. So I get up, I'm a big CrossFit fan now, have been for a couple of years. So I hit CrossFit. I come home, I have breakfast, I shower, and then I'm in my studio answering emails from my audience and recording new content. And my partner is in the office next door to me, and she handles all of the real estate stuff. And I'll meet with her over lunch, and we'll discuss whatever there is real estate related. And then I'll come back to the office and typically futz around, answer some more emails, maybe create a video or something like that, and go home and play with my son.
Awesome. Do you have a home office or where you drive or walk and go to an actual office?
Yeah, just about 8 months ago, I went ahead and left my home office and rented a giant warehouse and then totally pimped out the inside. And so it's really comfortable. I've got a whole green screen soundstage and a professional audio studio to record my podcasts. And this is where I come to work every day. Do you have kids, Ellery?
Cool. No, I don't.
Okay, so if you do, having kids and working from home can be a challenge.
I've heard that from several people before. Yeah. So, Matt, what are you doing today that will keep you moving forward tomorrow?
Constantly looking for great talent to hire. That is, I'm kind of addicted to hiring people right now because I've seen what it's done for my business just in the last 6 months. So that is going to keep me going.
What types of positions are you hiring for? Maybe someone in Southern California hears this and connects with you.
Sure. I need a real, what I'm looking for specifically at this very moment is an internet marketing guru. And I'm looking for someone that knows more about it than I do. And I have to warn you, I've been studying it for about 6 years. I think I know quite a bit.
I was going to say, you probably know quite a bit after what you've been
Yeah,
through.
but I want to hire someone that's better than me. I want to hire someone that can teach me something. And I certainly don't think I'm the best. I think I'm pretty good at it and I know a lot, but I know I don't know nearly all there is to know about it. So that's the thing, that the hiring part. And yeah, that's and continuing to build my residual income, because if it all went away tomorrow, I would still be just fine because I have that residual income coming in.
Matt, what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give people like me who are just starting out? We're eager to be successful and do the next big thing. What's one tip or piece of advice that you can give us?
Just one, huh?
If you have two, I mean,
sure.
maybe, depends on how much time you
sure,
have.
Let me give you 3 specific things.
Sure.
One is to be intentional about creating your environment. We all remember a time back in high school where we did something stupid because everybody else was doing it. Peer pressure works that way. But it also, if you surround yourself with like-minded people, you surround yourself with people that are actually doing what you want to eventually do, peer pressure works that way as well. So that's a big one. 2, find a role model. Find someone that is doing what you want to do, someone that has what you want to have, and find out how they do what they do and do the same thing in the same way that they do it, and you're going to get similar results. Huge shortcuts to success, huge shortcuts. And then the third thing was, remember when you're in business, it's people do business with people, and relationships is what really drives business. And there's a great quote from Gary Vaynerchuk's book, The Thank You Economy. He says, the higher tech your business gets, the lower tech your customer service needs to become. And so just don't forget that even if you're on the internet, you've got an internet business and you're successful and you're making money while you sleep, never lose sight, never forget that there was a person on the other side that, made that transaction for you. So treat them well. We follow up all of our transactions with phone calls. We follow up with Starbucks gift cards. We send out Christmas presents and, gifts like that around the holidays. And it's done 2 things. It's gotten us a ton of referrals, and it's been great for client retention.
Awesome. Quick question. What was the last movie you saw?
Last movie. I just saw this. I was in the hotel room in San Diego. Last Vegas with the
old comedians.
Yeah.
Was it good?
It was cute.
Yeah, I'd seen the previews to that one. I'm like, maybe Redbox.
It was entertaining. It wasn't going to cause you to think by any means, but it was entertaining.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Matt, if someone wanted to thank you for being on the Empowered Podcast and hanging out with Ellery, where can I send them?
Send them to my podcast, since they're already here. You and I, our podcasts are hosted, and probably we're going to appear in the exact same databases. So just look for DoOver, or look for Epic Real Estate Investing, or look for both, and you'll catch me there, and you can contact me through the podcast.
Awesome. And I'll have the links to both of those in the show notes. Actually, they were already there because I was clicking on them to do some of the things we were talking about.
Awesome.
So, Matt, thank you again for hanging out with me. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Ellery. You too.
There we go. That's the quote. Move at the speed of instruction. You don't need to know it all before you take your first step. And just some of my background. In 2006, I started working to become a financial advisor. I thought that's what I wanted to do, but that the talking about the financial side was not something that I was excited about, but helping people, not rely on whatever their current financial status was and planning for the future, that's what I really enjoyed. But the point of me telling you this is I did not do so well at that. I was not very successful because I wanted to have all of my ducks in a row before meeting with my first client. I ended up with 4 or 5 different licenses that allowed me to sell various products, and that's not all that interesting, except for the fact that I really slowed my progress and probably ended up what led to me not doing so well is I wanted to have all of the knowledge. I wanted to have all of, as Matt says, the instruction before I took any action. And I want to encourage you to avoid that mistake. If you have lived or if you have worked or had a special skill for a long time, you know you're constantly learning new things. You could be a PhD in neuroscience for 10 years and not have all of the knowledge necessary, but if you know you're not going to have all of the answers 10 years from now, you know you're not going to also have them in the next 10 days. So why not step out in faith that you'll learn along the way today? Why not take that first step? Why don't you take that small action and begin your journey today? And we can always course correct later down the road. So that's what I want to leave you with. Before we go, there's two things that I'm really excited about, and I want to highly encourage you to check them out. The first thing is I am starting my very first course. I've led mastermind weekends. I am a part of multiple projects. I have products that you can buy, but as my very first course, I'm calling it How to Turn Your Offline Expertise into an online business. I found that so many people have a really cool idea that could help hundreds, if not thousands of people, or just one person. They could change the life of one person, but they don't know how to get that message out into the world. I have designed this 8-week course that will walk you through the process. No technical expertise necessary. You don't even have to know what WordPress is. I didn't when I first started, but I want to take you from the idea part to implementation and walk you through the process of creating that product, setting up a website that will allow you to sell that product. And I think that's where most people get caught. I talk to people all the time, Ellery, what tool are you using to sell your products? How did you design your ebooks? Questions like that. I want to take all of that, condense it down into a very dense 8-week course that starts on July 1st. That's a Tuesday of 2014. Head over to ellerywells.com/expertise. So again, I'll say that one more time, ellerywells.com/expertise. I'm offering a very, very, very low introductory price because it's my first course. There will be kinks to work out. There will be things that we both learn along the way, but I know the content will be extremely valuable. So valuable that I'm offering a 30-day money-back guarantee, 100% no questions asked. It's $97, and with that, I'm going to give you 2 products that I've designed that will add up to over $50 worth of value. So $97, 8-week course, go from no website, no product, no idea to what you're going to do to I have a website, I have a product, and I have something that I can sell worldwide. Plus, you're getting over $50 worth of gifts from me as bonuses for being part of this very first class. So again, ellerywells.com/expertise. I only have a few spots available because of the format and because I want to devote a lot of attention to every single person who enrolls. So there's only a few spots available, ellerywells.com/expertise. And the other thing that I want to mention is I don't have the URL for it yet, but the guys in my mastermind group, we're going to put together something really cool. Where over the next few weeks, we're going to be releasing periodic episodes of podcasts. We're going to do webinars so that you can just be part of the actual podcast live Q&A sessions. Follow me on Facebook or like me on Facebook, connect with me, friend me, whatever it's called, and follow me on Twitter. Both of those are either facebook.com/ElleryWells or twitter.com/ElleryWells. And the reason why I want you to connect with me there is because I genuinely like you and want to thank you for being a part of the show and part of my life. But since I don't know the URL yet, I'm going to be sharing that out on those social networks. The first event, though, I can tell you is going to be on June the 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's Texas time for all of you international folks. It pretty much all boils down to being Texas time. That's just what we can call it. It's not Central Time, it's Texas time. Anyway, June 12th, 7 p.m. Stay tuned. Follow me on Facebook or Twitter, and make sure you have the notes. I'm so glad and so enthusiastic that you would spend time with me today. We'll see you in the next episode. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. We'll see you next time.